Hey there, Nick Genatakis here. In this video, let's talk about terminals, specifically wsltty, which is a terminal for Windows, and it is my favorite terminal. Over the years, I've tried a whole bunch of different terminals and ultimately landed on using this one. And in this video, we're going to go over two major things, which is the why and the how. So in the first part of this video, we're going to go over the why, which is basically like certain characteristics of a terminal that I really like and, why I chose wsltty over a whole bunch of different other terminals that I've tried in the past. And that includes the new Microsoft one that they announced in spring 2019. And by the way, as a side note, I am running WSL version 1, even though WSL version 2 is available as an insider's release. So I do not run the insider's release of Windows, mainly because it's just a nightmare when it comes to privacy, in my opinion. So they collect a lot more telemetry data, and there's no way to opt out of that. So, they have a full list of what they collect on Microsoft's website, and it's such a long list that I can't even narrate it here. It's too many things. But, the last time I glanced at it, it was pretty creepy. So, like, how long certain applications are open for, contents of files, like, low-level, like, networking inspections. Like, there's too many things there that kind of freak me out when it comes to, I don't want Microsoft to harvest that much of my data. Even though I'm not doing anything wrong, it's just too intrusive. So that's why I run the stable version of Windows, which means I'm going to be using WSL version 1 until it hits the stable release of Windows, which I think it's slated for spring 2020. So we do have a decent amount of time because right now it's September 2019. So let's get into it. And the first reason is why. So why did I choose this terminal when there's so many other ones available like Hyper and Terminus and the default Ubuntu terminal that comes with WSL. Then there's like ConEMU and Commander, and like there's so many other ones. And a couple, I don't know, I think like a year ago. So like I've updated this post recently, but I did write a blog post where I compared all of these terminals, and I'm not going to narrate this blog post, but the reason I wanted to show this on video is basically like these bullet points. So like to me, these are the things that, let me make that even a little bit bigger if I can. It's like what makes a terminal good. So for me, it's like, it's got to be super snappy. Like it's got to open up very fast. I don't care if I have it open all day. And, it like other terminals that I've tried took 4, 5, 6, 7 seconds to launch. And, even if I have it open all day, I still want it to open up fast. And I don't want it to use a ton of memory. So like Hyper, which is a terminal I've tried like a year ago, like that freaking thing took 400 megabytes just to open like one tab. Like, why? That's like more memory than like an entire Linux operating system uses. Like, what? Like, that's insanity. Jesus Christ. So like consumes low resources. That's a big thing. And this, to me, number one feature, typing should feel nearly instant. Like, it's got to have super low input latency. So like that's the phrase that you want to focus on here. So if I go back to this terminal, and there's really no way to show this too well on video, especially like right now I'm recording at 30 frames per second. So there's no possible way you're going to be able to really see. But when I hold this key down, like this is liquid smooth coming through to my monitor. There's no delay at all when I hold these things down. And if I just start typing, like this is me typing, like hello world, like there's no perceivable input latency that I can feel. And I'm super sensitive for this stuff. Like I used to play competitive Quake 3 back in the day, like whatever, like refresh rates and input latency and like being able to detect like milliseconds of delay. Like if there was 20 or 30 milliseconds of added delay, I would totally feel that and I would hate it. And that's partly why I got rid of certain terminals that I've used in the past, because they do have that input latency, and it was brutal to use it. Like when you press a key and you actually have to like visually wait until you see it, it just makes it feel like you're typing in mud. And if you're in the terminal and you're typing commands, or if your code editor like me is Vim and you're running terminal Vim, like you're pretty much in the terminal, like you're spending your whole day coding in there. So to me, typing is like the best or the most important thing. Like that's your terminal's job: receive input from you and show the output. Also, some other cool things that are really important, like the ability to use tabs and splitting windows and panes and stuff like that. And WSLTty does not support that at all. And that's totally cool. So one reason why I like WSLTTY, and by the way, this thing opens really fast. I mean, you can't really see me launch it, but like it opens immediately. So effectively instant. But it is pretty bare bones. So it does not have things like tabs or split panes or being able to split things, however you see fit. But that's where Tmux comes into play. And I've done a couple of videos on Tmux, and I will link those in the description. So like if I want a new tab here, I just hit like a Tmux shortcut here that creates a new window. In that Tmux video, I explain how these shortcuts work, so I'm not going to really go into that in this video. But if you look down here, like I'm spawning new windows now, and I'm switching between them with hotkeys. So this is very, very, very comparable to tabs. And if you prefer the mouse, like my Tmux config in my .files, which I will link in the description as well, like supports all of this stuff. So it's like if you want tabs, then your terminal doesn't really need tabs. It's all available through Tmux. And the same thing goes with splitting windows. Like if I want to split that in half this way, or I want to split it in half this way or this way, I can do that. And these splits open instantly, and I can zoom into specific splits that I want temporarily and then go back to normal. Like this is all great, great, great Tmux stuff. And then if I want to get rid of them, I just, exit out just like I would, anything. Like that's how you exit a session in Bash. So all of like, the nice to have features that you would expect in a terminal, you don't really need to have that baked into the terminal itself because Tmux has your back covered. And, there's some other things too here, like easy to search and scroll through the buffer. So if I do like an ls here, just to create a whole bunch of output here, right? And let's say I have all of this scroll back in the buffer now. Like, let's say I just want to like start searching through that. Like, I don't know, maybe like I'll do a search for index.markdown or something like that. So I can actually use Vim Search here. So like in Vim, if you hit the / or the question mark, you can search up or down. So I can just do a search for like index.markdown and find it. And now you can't really see this, but if you look at the top right, notice how it says 4 of 9 results. Each time I hit next, like the N key, it's jumping to the next one, or I can go in reverse if I want. The reason why the screen doesn't look like it's changing is because I basically just ran the same exact ls command, and the contents of that output, it's uniform for each time I ran it. So it doesn't really look like it's cycling through different things, but it actually is. So searching through your buffer, totally a solved problem with Tmux. Like there's not any like weird pop-up windows that need to come up or other crazy stuff like that. It's great. And then, other things too, like customizable hotkeys and like easy to change the color theme. Like those are nice to have, especially for me when it comes to hotkeys. I'm very hotkey oriented, even though I have to look down for some of them. Because especially like just the way the mic is positioned, like I can't just look down normally. But anyways, you can do things like the hotkeys to make this larger, or hotkeys to make it smaller, or the default size. This is the size that I usually run when I'm not recording a video, but I make it a little bit bigger so we can all see it on video nicely. And that's totally super important. Also, right now I have Tmux installed, so if I just select that, it copies it. But I can use Control-Shift-C and Control-Shift-V like any other Linux terminal to copy and paste, which is pretty nice. And those hotkeys are all set up with wsltty. So yeah, other terminals that I've tried in the past, they just fail all of these tests like miserably, especially when it comes to, well, I don't want to make this video where I'm just like completely pooping on every terminal known to man besides wsltty. But yeah, I had problems with ConEMU. I could just use too much CPU when idling. Possibly that bug is fixed by now. I don't know. But in either case, the input latency was way higher than WSLTTY. So immediately, that's no good for me. Hyper, pretty much one of the worst terminals I've ever used. It might be good on Mac OS. That's probably what the developer of Hyper uses. On Windows, it was just utterly terrible. Many bugs when it comes to like using its built-in split features, and took forever to open. It used like 400 megs of RAM for a tab. Maybe that got better in more recent releases. I don't know. At this point, I forgot the version I even tried. I think it was like 2.4 stable or something like that. I may have tried 3 like 6 months ago or whenever it was released, just for the heck of it. Not because I planned to switch, but I just wanted to see if it improved. And the input latency was a little bit better, but yeah, no reason at all to use this terminal. Even wsltty, it supports Unicode characters. It doesn't support emojis out of the box, but if you go to the wiki for MinTTY, which is what wsltty is set up, what it's based on, like you can get emoji support pretty easily. You just download like whatever font you need and put it in a special spot. Like it's all in the wiki if you really want them. I don't, because like I have 99 terminal problems, right? And like emojis is not one of them. So I don't really care too much about seeing smiley faces when I'm writing code. But I know that's probably not the most popular belief. Like a lot of people do like seeing them. So if you do want them, you can get them if you like. So I tried like Fluent Terminal and Terminus, which is another, Terminus is another one based on Electron. Super buggy at the time I tried it. Very high input latency. Same thing with Fluent Terminal, although I'm not sure if that one was based on Electron. Then I tried Terminator, which actually is a Linux terminal, and I just tried using, well, at the time MOBA Xterm, but now I'm using XVCRS. Like, I always forget how to say it. I actually have a video on it, and I'm like, it's the hardest name in the world to remember. And guess what? I can't remember it because I never really say it. But it's like an X server, so I actually ran that, and yeah, didn't work for me. So then I used like the WSL terminal that just comes by default from Microsoft. This is before their new terminal came out, which is this one. And input latency on that one was amazing. So this regular WSL terminal, it was great, but just so many little bugs with tmux. Like every time I minimized tmux, this status bar on the bottom would go away when I restored it. And yeah, I had some trouble. There was no shortcut hotkeys for zooming and stuff like that, which is totally not good for me when it comes to creating video courses, because a lot of times I'm outputting, some information on the terminal, and, I'm doing this stuff in real time. So if it wraps to 2 lines, sometimes I do need to make my font a little bit smaller just so it stays on 1 line. And having to fiddle through menus and all this other stuff, like that doesn't make a good video creation experience or a good experience for watching it. So I ruled that out. And then, as you probably know, if you're a Windows developer, Microsoft did release their new terminal a couple of months ago, and I tried it out, and right now, there's no reason for me to switch to it. WSLTTY has extremely low input latency as of version 3, and yeah, I don't need tabs in my terminal. Like, there was nothing about this terminal that I liked enough to even consider switching to it. I did install it, I gave it a shot. The input latency was comparable to WSLTTY, and other things weren't there that I needed, and I just didn't see it. There was no appeal to do it. So maybe I will try it later on if once it gets a little bit more polished. And if you wanted to install this and try it out on your own, the new Microsoft Terminal, you just open up the Windows Store and do a search for Microsoft Terminal Preview, and you will find it, and you'll be able to try it out on your own. So, these are all the terminals that I've tried in the past, and, I keep coming back to WSLTTY. So now let's go over installing it, configuring it, and all that fun stuff. So if you go to mintty/wsltty on GitHub, then you'll find the repository for this application. And if you go to releases here, we can see the latest stable release, which is 3.023. And if I go back to my terminal here, I already have it installed. And I go to the About page here, we can see our About button. I am running this, like there's the 3.023. So I'm not going to actually go over downloading this on video with you, but you can handle this on your own, I think. So you just click this link here to download the executable file, and then it's going to end up in your downloads folder, wherever you have that configured in your browser. Then you just double click it, click yes a couple of times, and it's going to poop out a WSLTTY icon on your desktop, and you just launch that. So you can also put that down, pin it to your taskbar, like whatever you prefer doing, or launch it with like a Windows search, things like that. So once you have it installed, it's not going to look like this by default. And we're going to go over the themes and stuff like that in a second, but let's go over some of the configuration options that we can configure first. So if you just right click anywhere on the title bar, then you can go to options. And I really wish I can zoom this in more, but gonna have to do that in post-production when I'm editing, so it may look a little bit pixelated. That's just how zooming works. I can't natively zoom this in anymore. And we're just gonna, anyways, we're gonna go down this list from top to bottom. So when it comes to looks, like again, I'm just gonna bypass talking about the theme for now, but you know, there's other things that you can turn on if you'd like. So if you do like transparency, I don't really have anything going on in the background behind that, so you can't really see. Let's see if I can do that. There we go. Looks probably a little bit weird on video, but you know, you can make like a high amount of transparency or low amount of transparency or no transparency. I kind of prefer no transparency just because, especially when I make videos, like the contrast of the terminal is super important. You know, if there's a lot of things blended in the background, especially when it comes to like bit rate quality, it gets a little bit hard to retext. But I do think, you know, the terminal looks kind of nice when it's a little bit transparent. So I wouldn't blame you if you decided to turn that on. When it comes to the cursor, I just use the black cursor because I am using terminal Vim. And trying to use Vim with like a line cursor is just, it's very, very, very strange. It doesn't line up to really where the cursor is. So I just use the black, but there's underscore as well, like whatever you like. And then there's like the blinking cursor as well. I don't like having the blinking cursor. So like if I turn that on, I don't need to see the cursor blink. Like it's super distracting, especially when I'm zoomed in so much and the font size is 1 trillion. Like that just, it's in my peripheral vision all the time. So I don't like it blinking, but if you do, then it's there. When it comes to text, so I just use like the Consoles font for Microsoft. I actually forgot what the NF stands for. This is a custom font, but I wish I really knew what that stood for off the top of my head. But the font itself is, it visually doesn't look much different or any different at all than Consoles or Consoles, whatever. The one that just comes straight up with Microsoft Windows. So, you know, and if you want to change your font, you can just pick it from here, you know, pick what you want, sizing, etc. I like 11 as my default font size. It just looks good with Vim when I have like a whole bunch of splits open. Sometimes I even fit 4 of them, which is pretty nice. Definitely allows me to be pretty productive, but you know, font sizes, stuff like that, that's not really related to wsltty. But if you do want to change all that stuff, it's here. And then for the hotkeys, I forget which all the default options are. I'm pretty sure one of them that I for sure had to turn on was this bottom one here. So the Control-Shift letter shortcuts, you know, that allows you to do things like Control-Shift-C and Control-Shift-V to copy paste. If that's not checked off, then you won't be able to do that. I'm pretty sure zoom was enabled by default. If not, you know, basically just turn all the hotkeys on except for the top. And then like the other stuff you really don't need to worry about, like the compose key and things like that. Then we have some mouse support, like if you want copy on select, that's there. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of options here. I don't think I actually changed any of these. Pretty sure I didn't. Yeah, these are all the default. And then when it comes to the window, so I like it just to open up at 80 columns wide, 24 rows, which is the default. And yeah, that works for me. If you want to make it a little bit bigger, feel free to do so. You know, that controls the height and the width. And then scroll back lines, you know, how far along in the buffer can you scroll up? That doesn't really affect me on a day-to-day because I'm using tmux anyways. And I forget exactly how many lines tmux is configured to scroll up, but it's a hell of a lot. So it's actually in my dot file somewhere in my tmux config. I think it's like 50,000, maybe even more. Yeah, there it is, set to 50K. So pretty good scroll back size for searching for stuff. Scroll bar, you know, if you want to have it, you can have it. I kind of don't like having it because I just use tmux anyways to go back. And if I'm really going back, I just use the page keys or I use search. I don't really need a scroll bar. And you can also use the mouse wheel to go up and down if you'd like. So that kind of works for like fine tuning a little bit scrolling if you don't know exactly where to go. Modifiers, stuff like that. Yeah, those are all the defaults I didn't mess around with. And then for the terminal, I just chose Xterm 256 color. I'm pretty sure that may have been the default. It may have been Xterm by default actually, but in either case, you want to set it to this one. So this will allow us to get our theme looking pretty nicely. And like when it comes to the bell beeps, like holy cow, man, like if you hit backspace and you can't really hit backspace anymore, I don't want that thing beeping at me like crazy. So I turned all of that stuff off, although I'm pretty sure that may have been off by default anyways, because sounds by default would be totally crazy. So now let's go over the main event here, I guess, right? Which is how can we make the thing look better than what it does by default? Because I think it may have been like a black color or something like that by default. So when you install wsltty without doing anything else, these Groovebox or Gruvebox, whatever, these aren't going to be here. But I don't even know if Dracula is going to be there. It might have been a custom one, but all the other ones are default ones. So if you just pick any of these from the list and hit apply, so like if I wanted to go to Dracula and apply that, that's the Dracula theme. I actually did use this for a while, although like some of the tmux colors look a little bit busted, so that would require updating your tmux config to make it match your terminal theme. But while I'm talking here, I'll just go through a couple of these just so you can get an idea of what they look like. So I think the min-tty, this one might have been the default one. I didn't like it. The blue's a little bit too dark for me on the black. Like here's another one that, not the highest contrast, but not too terrible, I guess. I'm not going to evaluate all of these because, I mean, if that was the one I want, then I would be using it. So let's see. One more, Xterm. Yeah. So I just use this one, the dark variant. And I kind of like this one. Yeah, pretty good contrast, pretty good colors. There's a matching Vim theme that is all set up in my dot files. So it's a seamless like transition between the terminal and Vim, which is really cool. So now let's talk about themes, because maybe if you don't like any of these themes and you don't like the one I'm using and you want to try a different theme on your own, that's totally no problem. But before we go into that, let me just go to this repo here, which of course I will be linking in the description. And, this is the exact min-tty RC file that I have set up, which is the Gruvebox theme that you were looking at, the dark variant of it. So when you do a search, and this is how you could search for other themes if you don't like any of these, make sure you just search for min-tty themes, and you'll find like a whole bunch, hundreds of them that you can choose from. So all you have to do is take this file, like this RC file, put it in a certain directory, restart wsltty, and then it will just allow you to pick it straight from that drop-down box that we were looking at before. So let me just show you where this is at. So I think it's in my users directory. Is it in my users directory? I think it is. What is it? App data, maybe? Is it roaming or local? I think it's roaming. So I'm just rambling to myself. Jesus, lots of things here. Okay, so it is wsltty. Okay, what else is here? So there's the themes folder. Yeah, here it is. So of course your username is going to be different, but if you go to users, your users, and you download that RC file to here, then that's all you need to do to get it all set up. Now there is one thing I want to talk to you about here. My theme is slightly modified. So this background color, I have mine set to 38, and this theme file is not in my dot files, and this is the only line that's different. So if you want it to look exactly like mine, then if you look at theirs over here, they're using this 29, 32, 33 color. And the interesting thing about Gruvebox is it has like 3 different contrast ratio modes, and it really just comes down to like how dark or bright do you want the background color. And in my case, I prefer the darker color. Like it just makes it easier to read in my opinion. So that's why I changed it to this one. That's the only change I made. So every other color here is the same as what you would see exactly on this file. So that's pretty much how I have, wsltty configured. And was there anything else I wanted to show? I don't think so. I mean, you can also use this Gruvebox theme for other terminals if you didn't want to use wsltty, I guess. But yeah, honestly, I foresee myself using this terminal for quite some time. I will reevaluate the Windows terminal again in spring 2020 or, whenever a more stable version comes out. But to be completely honest, like this is the perfect terminal for me. If it hits all the boxes and I use it full time, it's super stable, it doesn't crash. Yeah, it's a really good one, and I'm real happy that I found it. And that's kind of why I made this video. Let me know how it goes in the comments. If you have any questions or any issues trying to set it up or configure it, let me know and I'll do my best to answer them. Thanks a lot for watching, and I will see you in the next video.